Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the channel, and I'm here for a versus video for you guys, and this is a band versus video. Now I know it's been a little while since my last band versus video, but this is actually one I thought about doing recently, so I figured, hey, why not do it? Why not talk about the debate between the two bands that I'm talking about here? And the two bands I am, of course, talking about are in metalcore. Now, metalcore, I will admit, it's not something that I'm that thrilled about like I used to be. I mean, metalcore was definitely something that I was very high on whenever it was my first year of college. I mean, I considered it probably my favorite subgenre of metal at the time. I still do like some metalcore today, even though I don't listen to it as much as I used to. And of course, the two bands here I still do like. Now, of course, I like one more than the other. Of course, that's what this video is about. And this video is just, of course, my opinion. You don't have to agree with my opinion. If your opinion's different than mine, that's totally fine. But the bands that I will be comparing in this video are Killswitch Engage and All That Remains. Of course, both early 2000s metalcore bands, and the reason I decided that I would compare these two bands is because, well, they of course do have their similarities. They're both in metalcore, early 2000s metalcore, to be more specific. So, yeah, definitely both very good bands, and I will say that I will, of course, tell you what band I do like more, which band I do prefer. And the band that I do prefer would have to be Killswitch Engage. And the reason being is because, well, for one, I think Killswitch Engage has a better discography overall. Can't really say the same for All That Remains. Now, All That Remains, yes, you could argue that, you know, they have a good discography other than just a few albums or whatever. But besides the fact that I think that Killswitch Engage has a more solid discography, I will say that I do prefer both Jesse Leach and Howard Jones over Phil Labonte of All That Remains. Now, Phil Labonte, his vocals are alright. I'm not really what you call the biggest fan of his clean vocals, but I would not say his clean vocals are bad by any means. Just not something that, you know, I want to listen to all the time, I guess you could say. Now, comparing debut album with debut album, this is something that I do have to bring up. This is where it's kind of challenging because, you know, I feel like with a lot of metalcore bands, this is actually common with a lot of metalcore bands. I feel like a lot of metalcore bands' debut albums are some of their weakest, which is kind of bizarre because I feel like with, you know, most bands, at least in other genres and other subgenres of rock and metal, sometimes it's usually the debut that's one of the band's best work, but it's weirdly not that way with metalcore. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, there's other bands that come to mind when it comes to metalcore bands' debuts that I think it's also not their best. I mean, it's not something that's very common. I'm not sure why that is. So, yeah, when it comes to both Killswitch Engage and All That Remains' debut albums, they're both not some of their best, but both not bad, though, for sure. Now, I will say that Killswitch Engage has never released a bad album, okay? Yes, they have albums better than others, of course, but they've never released a bad album. I mean, there's not one weak album in their discography, I think. I can't really say the same for All That Remains, and I think there's a lot of people that can understand that for sure, especially since with All That Remains, you had albums like Madness, The Order of Things, and there's even some people that don't like A War You Cannot Win. Now, what's my stance on that album in particular? I think it's okay. It's not one of their best, but I think it's an okay album. But overall, like I said before, Killswitch Engage just has a more solid discography overall. Some of my favorite albums from them would be Alive or Just Breathing, As Daylight Dies, Incarnate, and of course the most recent one, Atonement. I've seen some people say that Atonement was their weakest or one of their weakest, but I actually don't agree with that at all. I think Atonement is actually one of their best. I mean, some people might argue it's more of the same or whatever, but I don't know if I'd say that. It has some variety to it, I think. I think it's one of Killswitch Engage's albums that have the most variety to it. Now, the reason I say that is because, well, when it comes to both bands, actually, Killswitch Engage and All That Remains, both bands can be kind of samey. Now, I say kind of because it's not something that occurs all the time. And the thing is that's typically common with metalcore, and that's also one of my complaints with metalcore these days, is a lot of it is kind of repetitive and samey, I guess. Like, a lot of it, kind of sounds the same, I guess. There's some other metalcore bands that maybe don't fall into that category, but both the bands here kind of do fall into that category. But I would still not say that they're bad bands by any means. They still create some really great music. Now, when it comes to All That Remains, some of my favorite albums from them would have to be The Fall of Ideals, easily my favorite from them. Maybe one of my favorite metalcore albums. I don't know. But it is a really good album, though. It has some of their best tracks, of course. This Darkened Heart is actually another one of my favorites as well. I mean, just to name a few. And you also got Overcome, which is where they started becoming a little more commercial with their sound, a little more radio friendly, trying to gain a certain audience, I guess, trying to gain that commercial appeal, I guess. And that's not something that Killswitch Engage really did that much. Now, yes, you could argue that Killswitch Engage kind of was trying to gain some commercial success, maybe with songs like Cut Me Loose and I Am Broken Too. Maybe, more recent songs like those, from the recent time of the band's career. So I think that is usually something that is common with a lot of bands, though. But again, I just think overall Killswitch Engage is better than All That Remains. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I'd probably go with Killswitch Engage over All That Remains any day. Now, All That Remains, I do think they were good bands, but I will say that they're not in my top 3 favorite metalcore bands or anything. Maybe top 5, but definitely not top 3. That's for certain. But I think both are very good bands. Killswitch Engage might be within my top 3. Yeah, I would maybe say that they're my 3rd favorite metalcore band, actually. But both are very good bands, so for this video, for my choice, I gotta go with Killswitch Engage. So that's just my opinion, though. Once again, if your opinion's different than mine, if you prefer All That Remains more, that's fine. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think. Which band do you prefer, Killswitch Engage or All That Remains? Feel free to let me know in the comments, of course. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.